Good evening and welcome to the Timberlane School Board meeting of Thursday, June 29th. I'll do is I guess we'll start the meeting here with a pledge of allegiance here. Mr. Spiro, Ryan, call the roll first.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, Mrs. Belcher, could you call the roll, please?
Peter Buelow.
I'm here.
Brian Boyle.
Here.
Stephanie Doobie. Kim Farah.
Here.
Donna Green.
Here.
Dan Guide.
Here.
Sue Sherman.
Here.
Greg Spiro.
Here.
Kelly Ward. Also present this evening is the superintendent of schools, other administrators, and the president of the TTA will be reflected in the minutes.
Okay, thank you. Okay. First of all, thank everyone. I want to thank everyone for coming here tonight. First order of business here, I would like to invite Mr. Ryan Richmond up here, the president of TTA. So, before you get going here, Ryan, as you know, this is a special meeting, so there was no delegate. Thank you. There was no here for delegates, so being the union president, and I heard from the superintendent Friday evening that you wanted to meet with us, so this is why you're here tonight. So we want to maintain open communications with the staff, and if I understand, there's been in the past I don't know, it's by policy, or that you've been asked not to confer with the board, or is there a policy? I'm asking, is there a policy?
That's my understanding, yeah.
There is policy, so you should, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So, good evening, thank you. We do understand the nature of the meeting. There's no delegations or individuals tonight, so we are thankful for the opportunity to address the board. After seeing the posted agenda, we wanted to indicate that if tonight's goals revisitation is regarding addressing the issues surrounding student discipline, the TTA welcomes the opportunity to work with the board on the implementation of clear and measurable goals and action items aimed at addressing the real issues that face the district. We look forward to better communication around these areas and working with the board, other stakeholders, and the administration in addressing the issues affecting the professional climate in the district. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. So are you going to be sticking around?
Oh, I'll be here all night.
Okay, very good. All right. Okay, thanks. Okay, let's go through our first order of business here. We have a policy BEA second read action.
Make a motion to accept BEA for the second read of BEA.
Second. Motion made second, and then discussion on the motion.
Okay.
You want discussion?
Yeah, as I said before, when we first considered it 2 weeks ago, I think that we should eliminate the section under E at the back that says meetings of the board are conducted for the purpose of carrying on the business of the schools and therefore are not public meetings, but meetings held in public.
Okay, motion, is there any other discussion? Motion been made and second. All those in favor of the motion, say an aye. Opposed? Okay, motion. That was 1, 2, 3. 7, 4, 1 against. The next item agenda is policy committee potential summer meeting schedule. Myself and Dr. Farah sat down with superintendent, and he's agreed to make some staff available this summer, so during the day, so we can have 1 or 2 policy meetings. So this is on the agenda, so we can make that schedule happen. Okay?
Great, do we have some dates?
Dates are, I honestly don't have any dates.
Well, what I would suggest, Donna, you're the chair, policy would be to let Kathy know when you're available during the day, right? And then you can put out
I can certainly poll.
a poll to the rest of the committee, just like we are doing for the summer dates for the school board, so that we can get dates that way. That way, obviously, the chair needs to be available, so that's usually how it works.
And you're saying there are 2 policy meetings to be scheduled between now and mid-August? Or,
Okay,
Seems reasonable.
yeah? Okay, very good.
so,
I mean, I can't commit, I don't know if all the administrators will be available based on vacation schedules and things, but I can say we'll have at least 2 representatives there to, you know, and hopefully between you and Stephanie and Peter, you'll have at least 2.
to have a meeting, which is all you really need to have the meeting.
Yeah.
Great.
So in terms of polling the committee, then, I can't remember off the top of my head who's on this committee. Is it better to just have the dates and then have you just assign to, or are you gonna put it out to all the people on the committee? I'm just not sure what the best way to go about scheduling this is.
I think the best way is the way you
Initially?
previously, just
Okay.
because, you know, like, for instance, if we tried to have it Monday, people wouldn't be available on July
Right.
3rd, but
Okay,
I,
so.
I,
availability.
just to
Kathy
check,
seems to
just
have a
to,
good system
Yeah,
that
no,
works, so.
It should work, okay.
and a time too, because some people, it might be 1 to 3, or it might be 9 to 11. I don't know what works best for folks.
Sure.
So we'll give a couple of different options, AM, PM, and go from there.
Great, appreciate it. I'm sure.
I'd just like to say that I'm available every single day through the summer,
Okay.
except for the first week of July,
Okay, so-
AM or PM?
just
Does it
in the
matter?
daytime.
AM or PM?
I'm available
Do
PM.
you have a preference, AM or PM?
Well,
Doesn't matter?
because Mrs. Dubé can't make it in the AM,
No.
you know,
I would assume you can't either.
I actually can make it, I work 5 minutes from here. So if there's a meeting anytime, if there's a meeting held within the envelope of 11 o'clock to 2 o'clock, I can, unless it conflicts with a customer call, I can generally make it. So kind of the middle of the day is best for me. I just wander over and go back to work.
And if it works better, which I think it probably will for the administrators, I can clearly, as a chair, take Mrs. Doobie's place there for the meetings this summer, so we can make that happen.
so I will give you my PM schedule, but my AM schedule is virtually wide open, except for the first week of July. Okay, so,
Why don't we just say nothing first week of July?
yeah.
Good plan. Okay.
Great. That'll work.
I'm confident Mr. Belichick can handle that. Great, appreciate it. This is great. Look at this.
Don't say that.
Internal control audit. I have this down as an action item because it's requested, which I also support, that I think the district should do. We obviously have our own auditors, but I think it makes sense, as other districts have done, to have an outside firm come in and do an internal control audit. I believe, I haven't had a chance yet to talk to the SAU chair, but I think it'd be wise for, same thing with Hampstead, and I think it'd be wise for them to do the same thing as a lot of schools in the areas have done. So I would open this thing up for discussion here about an internal control audit.
So we're looking to take action on proposing that we go develop an RFP for an internal control audit, correct? Is that the proper?
Dr. Metzel.
Yeah, I asked Attorney Dowd to be here for this discussion, so if you would. Primarily, we're not opposed to an internal controls audit, it's just the timing of such. And I'll let Attorney Dowd kind of just express his concerns, because the timing is important, because we had a long discussion about what would be the best time to do this, and what would be a wise use of funds, because if we were to identify, and I don't want to take all your material, but we were identify, Attorney Dowd has already identified some work, so if we were auditing in the middle of an implementation of some control, we may get invalid data that really is not all that useful. It'd be a waste of an audit, other than letting him implement some things and then perhaps auditing afterwards. We'd be auditing a practice that's being changed in the middle of an audit, if that makes sense.
Understandable.
But go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
What would the goal of an internal controls audit be on the part of the board? I know other districts are doing it, I get that, but what would those goals be? Because I think that would help to help me articulate what it is that I'll be doing as we move forward, as Mr. Stokinger will not be serving after June 30th, after 10 years with the district. I am having an opportunity to take a fresh look at all of our processes and understand them and improve them to the extent that I can.
Well, I think the timing's perfect, because you assuming this new role, you're looking at it from one set of eyes. I know you've been working with Mrs. Stotinger for, the past 12 months?
18.
18, even better. So, to me, I just look at it as an independent look of systems, of everything. I can't think of any negative to an internal control audit. I mean, it's always nice to get an independent view of what's going on. It's such a large budget. And I think, again, with you taking on this new role, I think the timing's perfect. Because you probably have your own ideas what you want to do, and I think this could do nothing but help you.
I agree to an extent, and the extent to which I agree is I absolutely 100% would appreciate feedback on the processes that I'm putting in place, or that I'll be putting in place, or that I'll be changing or modifying to increase internal controls or reporting or whatever the case may be. However, having a firm come in at a point at which I'm undertaking those changes is very difficult, because in terms of the data that they look at, they don't want to come in and look at a process, right? They're not going to come in and say, well, show me what your narrative is. What they want to see is, what's the narrative? How is it supposed to work? How is it working? Which means that they need data. They need to see how processes have been working. And I do not intend to wait until an internal controls audit comes along to begin making changes. Having an internal control audit occur prior to my being able to make changes, observe and make those changes, would result in, it would be a mess, if you will. It's like.
So what do you think the timing of it is? Then what would your thoughts are? What do you think the better timing would be?
I think I'd like to go in and review and make the changes, or any changes that are necessary to our processes that'll help our internal controls, that'll help our reporting or assurances or anything like that. And I think that's going to be, several months out. And I think that even after that, you've still got several months of data, seeing how these processes work for all of our internal processes. Yes, I have been here for 18 months. However, my view on things is limited. And it's not that I have concerns in terms of what those internal controls are, but I have a background in internal controls, and what we've seen, and that was one of the reasons I was brought in, what we've seen in other districts, and I know that there's one very local district that practically touches our district, SAU district. There were a lot of findings in that report, and I've looked at that report, and I think that it's important. I don't denigrate anyone. They can do things however they want, wherever they want. I know how we need to be doing things. When you review that report, in Wyndham School District in particular, you had, and this is nothing against their business administrator, but you had a business administrator who was their director of technology come into that role. And as I read and as I looked at the findings in that report and the processes they had in place, I just thought to myself, this is what happens when you have someone in that role who is not an accountant, who is not familiar with internal controls and the need for them. I don't know that it's any bad faith or bad will, but we just do things differently. And I think that, from your world, this is having someone start a house and have someone have a different contractor come in, complete the house, and try and have a process review midstream. Like, well, no, we're going to do things this way, and we're going to do things that way, and that's that. So what I would like is to have my processes in place, because I would value the observations on those processes once they're in place. Once they're set, once we have data to test them, I would appreciate that feedback. If I can be doing something better, I'd like to be doing it better. I don't think it's unreasonable for this district to have continuous process improvement at all. And that's not just making things streamlined or faster or better. That's also adding elements of internal controls to everything that we do. So that's my observation. I think some time on that would be beneficial to be able to have that data. I think with our external audit coming up, our budget coming up after that, I think as soon as that's complete would be a perfect time to be able to have our processes in place long enough so that we can have that data to be able to look at and actually test. And even just a couple months, 3 months worth of data is usually enough for that firm to come in and take a look and say, yeah, we see what they want to do, we see what they're doing, and we'd like to see some results. So show us what it is that you've done.
Yep, makes sense.
So I have a comment and a question. So my first comment is the metaphor of building a house and having another contractor come in. Really, it's building a house and having an inspector come in and check the electrical system before the drywall goes up. That's the metaphor, in my opinion. What exactly, Mr. Dowd, do you want to change?
I won't know fully until I get in and am able to actually understand what the processes are that we're doing now. I will give you one example of what it is that I've been looking at, and I've met with a number of our vendors and contractors already. One great example is our bank offers what they call positive pay. And that means that we send them a data file of our checks by number and the amounts of those checks. And that's a great way to confirm that the checks that are issued, the bank already has notice of. And if a check comes in for a different amount or a different check number, whatever the case is, that check becomes an exception for them to verify. So we're not on the other end of it waiting to confirm that a number has been changed or tampered with, or a check, which happens unfortunately now. It's not difficult to print a check and bring it to the bank and forge a signature. If the bank does not see that check number in the listing that we provide to them, or the amount of the check not correlating to that check number, that's going to be an exception, and they're going to question it. And that's an example of the internal controls that I would like to, one example of the internal controls that I've been looking at to put in place. That's a process on our end that needs to be developed.
So let me tell you what is involved in an internal control audit, because I have the table of contents from Wyndham's report. So there's entity level controls, and honestly, I don't know what that entails. Anti-fraud controls, governance, financial reporting, general ledger, information technology, budgeting, treasury function, purchasing and vendor disbursements, payroll cycle, departmental receipts, student activity funds, grant accounting, fixed asset and equipment tracking, other areas, and I'd like to suggest RFP and bidding process. So I honestly doubt that we're going to be revising all of these high-level functions. These are processes that they're looking at. They're looking at a process. As far as I know, they're not really looking at long-term data. They're looking at what is the financial reporting cycle, not what is it reporting, but what is the cycle. How are we treating the general ledger? Who has authority to oversee and approve changes? Things like this. This is enormously helpful for a person new to the role, to give you ideas and encouragement and facts to go on to actually change the systems. If I were in your position, I would be welcoming this with open arms, because it can only make your job easier.
Okay. All right. Dan? So Jeff, what do you think? In April would be a good time?
Probably.
Budget's done, all that stuff's done, and then everything that you've implemented, you pretty much be critiqued on.
Yes.
I agree with that.
And I think as your list is delineated, there's a lot, and quite frankly, Mr. Green, there's not one area there that probably won't be impacted, that I've seen, that I don't think we can't do a little differently or a little bit better, or maybe achieve a little bit more of an internal control. And I think having that initial layer, and then having an observation of that on top of everything that's been done already, would really be most useful. And I think that's really where we can get the most, benefit from that expenditure. Because I'd like to get these processes in place. It's not a delay. I don't have a fear or worry that, that I know that money is falling out the back door or something like that. I just think that we can do things better, and I think that our previous business administrator and I have a different perspective, and I think that's okay. But I think that I would like that to be the icing on top. I'd like that to really be an observation of what's going on, because then we're really not, they can make recommendations and observations, but they're not able to tell me how that's working out. And they do go through, and if you see in the Wyndham audit, they did test data. They did say, if this is your process, take me through it. If it's your payroll process, take me through it. If this is your RFP process, take me through it. Show me what happens. And incidentally, to the extent that I've been able to have influence over the RFP process in our district, and I have not been able to have full influence over that in our combined SAU, I think that we've achieved significantly greater results. I have not had complete ability to influence that process just because it really needs to start from the ground up. But I could give you examples of where I've been able to influence that, and we've received 10 RFPs, or 10 responses to an RFP request. So I think that looking at that, how it's implemented, not what should be done, but looking at how it's implemented, and then saying, gee, we can do that better, great. I think that would be the right time to do it.
Kim, then Peter.
I think what we're looking at now is just to have a motion to approve the development of an RFP. Once the RFP is developed, I would think that the process would come to the board to take a look at. Then we would send the RFP out with some sort of date.
Timeframe.
So, timeframe that this is gonna be done. So I think we're getting a little ahead of ourselves, and I can certainly concur with the fact that you've gotta have a few months of data with new processes to have them take a look at. So, I think we're kind of jumping ahead here. I don't know how long it's gonna take to develop an RFP. Is that a 2-week? Is that a month? Is it 6 weeks? I mean, we're not talking to do an internal control audits, in August or September here, I don't think.
Yeah, and the good thing is I'm not here saying, I don't want an internal controls audit. I'm saying I'd like one. I'd like one to
Right,
actually
no,
be able
and-
to provide.
And I appreciate that, and we have to be cognizant of what's coming up in the fall.
Mhm.
But I think we were just trying to be proactive to get this RFP developed, so
Mhm.
that we could then move forward and go out with a bid under what is a reasonable timeframe.
And I think as part of,
What?
The budget for it?
Yeah.
Peter?
Yeah, I guess, to a certain degree, I agree with Kim. This really is about, getting action to do the RFP. But I think the conversation's been good because it's kind of maybe setting expectations about, what we're gonna hear next.
Yeah.
And, in addition to, what Jeff is saying about, implementing some changes, getting some data first, and then doing it, I think that makes sense. But in addition, right now, he's trying to get up and running, running the financial system here. Then come August 1st, the auditors come in, right? And
a
that's,
little after that, yeah.
pardon me?
A little after that, but yeah,
Oh, they're coming in later this year?
yeah.
So, but that's a good month-long process, and then he immediately leads in, and I know it's all consuming, then immediately leads into the whole budgetary process. So, yeah, as soon as we get the budget set, March, April, I'm thinking it's a win in a lot of ways. Gives him the data, gives him the time and his people the time to open up and do this. One question I do have is, having never seen one of these before, what sort of time commitment is there?
Depends really on the scope.
Okay.
Depends on the scope, and it depends on how that firm would be viewing, viewing their data, their testing.
Is it larger or smaller than the audit we do annually?
It is probably not as large on the one hand. On the other hand, where they're testing different processes that they're taking through soup to nuts, it's a little bit different in terms of the amount of work required. Where with the audit, I can provide information and I can provide backup and data, and they can do their testing. With this, they're coming in really trying to understand what it is that we do how we're doing things in the first place. So it's more consuming in that regard, I think, from a personnel standpoint, from a labor standpoint.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Dr. Metzel?
Yeah, I believe the real metaphor here is to measure twice and cut once. Meaning, he's gonna take a look and see what kind of changes. I'm not gonna ask him to make changes and then make changes again. We have the system of training the employees upstairs, however we do it now, and whatever changes we think are good changes to make. We're not gonna make them twice, right? It wouldn't be a good use of time, it wouldn't be a good use of personnel, we'd confuse the people upstairs. So I think, as we're having this discussion, there are things that you need to put in place immediately because there are things that you need to do. Well, that's all well and good. If we're talking next spring, that may make some sense, but remember, he's gonna be training staff on some new procedures, processes, if you will. So I think that's why, get back to the beginning of this conversation, I think the timing of this is important, so I appreciate you, Dr. Farrar, kind of talking about really what an RFP is and what that will look like moving forward. Does that make sense? I mean, can you picture a new business administrator changing the processes and then having somebody come in the middle of that, and then having to change them while he's telling the people on the back wall how to do the business?
I think, again, I think all we're trying to do tonight is go to an RFP. So Donna, let's.
Well, I disagree with that, and I also disagree with that. So what I'm hearing is, we're not gonna change things twice, quote. We're not going to change things twice, quote. So what are we doing an internal audit for if they're not gonna change things? If something has already been changed and the internal auditors say it needs to be changed again, we just had a quote. We're not gonna change things twice. So, don't change a thing, let the internal auditors come, see what needs to be done, and they'll assist you in
Okay.
improving,
Then you don't-
please.
then you don't
in-
disagree.
I have the floor, please, in improving the process. So therefore, you don't have to change anything twice.
Then we don't
And
disagree.
the other thing,
That's-
and the other thing is that you do not need an RFP to solicit bids for an internal controls audit. All you have to do is give them the example of Wyndham and see what their table of contents was along with RFP and bidding process. And that is what we need bids on. We don't need to take 2 months to develop an RFP. Furthermore, there's going to be a different board here in April, and this is never going to be done. We've been a 50-year district, and we've never had an internal controls audit, never.
Well, okay, all right.
May I make a motion?
Okay, before we make this motion, I think you're underestimating the background he has. And by the way, I do like this conversation about this pro-builder conversation, nice examples here. But for your information, before I was a home builder, I was an auditor for 4 years.
Federal auditor, I believe.
Federal auditor, there
Federal
you go.
auditor.
So there you go. So it was a long time ago, and I mean, people there was school buses back then. No, it was a while ago. But it was a while ago. So I like the fact of you have this background of this unique approach to your new job here, and there will be, because God willing, I plan on serving my term. I plan on being alive for the next 30-some-odd months. There will be an internal audit here. And I think what I would like to see tonight is just keep the process moving forward. Let's have it's a pretty simple RFP, I would think. And let's get the process so we can get the thing scheduled and be properly budgeted, and let's go. So I will entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion that we, I'm not sure it's ask or allow, Mr. Dowd to put together an RFP and go out for bid on having an internal controls audit.
Second.
Okay.
Motion made, second, Donna.
So when you say be properly budgeted, so in other words, it wouldn't even be done until July of next year? Because that is when the new
Well,
budget
let's make sure there's money, so basically,
There's money.
okay, then I guess we're all set. Then we're all set then, Donna. So whether this audit happens
And it wasn't part of
90
the
days from
motion.
now or 120 days from now, that's all. That's all. It's going to happen. So, there's a motion made on the floor.
Second.
I'd like to amend the motion to say the RFP is to be presented at the next school board meeting.
We don't know what that is, though.
It's okay.
Presented when? I missed that.
At the next school board meeting.
So that may be, that could be within a 30-day window. Would that be, is that a possibility before we vote on this thing?
Well,
Do you have a second on that amendment?
I'll second. Time, right? So,
well, it could be within a 2-week window
But
if
that's
we
why-
decided, so
we
that's.
have time. It's not there, I mean, if we're talking doing this in April, right?
No, but the amended motion did. I'm talking about time of the,
For the RFP.
yes.
But my point is that just to get the RFP to see it, we have time. Like, we don't have to see it at the next meeting, whether it's in 2 weeks or a month. We have time for that RFP to be even put together and be put out. We have plenty of time.
That's not the amended motion.
No, I know that. I'm just
I think
making
it's a
the
discussion
argument
statement.
Okay.
is that
Just
we
making a
have
statement.
plenty of time. It's not like we're trying to get this done
Yes.
to get it implemented in
I agree.
September. We're
Correct.
trying to do it so we can do it in April. So we have time. We don't have to see the RFP at the next meeting if it's in 2 weeks or a month.
Right, so you're disagreeing with the amendment.
Okay. So there's been a motion. Do you propose an amendment? Is there a second to the amendment?
Stephanie seconded it.
Okay. All those in favor of the amended motion? Opposed? Okay. Motion fails. So now we'll go back to original motion. Which, could you read the motion?
I was actually going to ask Mr. Beal if he could clarify that motion. It was to draft an RFP.
thought it was
on
straightforward.
Internal controls, audit, but I thought you had more to that, and I wasn't
No,
sure.
just
Okay.
allow Attorney Dowd to go out and or request him, or I'm not sure if it's request or allow, whichever, to go out with, put an RFP together and go out for bid on an internal controls audit.
My impression is to create the RFP and bring it
Right.
back to the board for review.
Yes, to create it and bring it back.
Yeah.
Because there
Oh.
could be some discussion on that, depending, I would just like to see what the scope is.
Exactly.
Fine. Okay,
That's
fine.
fair.
I would like to offer amendment within a 60-day window.
I'll second that.
I mean, I want an end to that, so.
And I'm running into budgeting after that anyway, and if it's earlier, it's earlier, and if the board
That's
has
fine,
time to
that's
discuss
why I'm
it.
using it. I know that you should
Super.
be able to do something with, so I want to make sure we have it accountable here.
It's fine.
So it's been seconded. All those in favor of the amended motion?
So, okay.
Unanimous?
Did something very different
No.
here.
Okay, I'm sorry. Opposed?
Can you-
So there is
7-1.
7-1.
no, it's not.
Oh, the amended motion was.
Yeah, so, you're right, so we're not clear, we have to be a little more clear about the amendments and the motions for that. So who made the second on the amendment? Thank you. And then the vote was,
7-1.
thank you, and
Donna,
who dissented?
Donna.
Thank you.
Did you vote for it, Stephanie, or against it?
I voted for it. I
Okay.
thought you were still counting hands.
I could,
why
that's
I-
why I
Yeah,
thought
yeah.
that. I was like,
So now you have a newly amended motion. Thank you.
Now we have to vote on the amended
Right.
motion.
Okay. All those in favor of the amended motion, same thing. Aye.
Thank you.
Unanimous.
It was
Thank you.
unanimous.
Very well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Brian, could I just clear up something?
Sure.
I misspoke earlier on the policy meetings. Because it's a board policy committee, you need to have a quorum of the membership. It's only one more than four, it would be five. I said you only need 2 and 2, you'd need a fifth person there, which is, that's not a big hurdle. I just wanted to be clear that we'd have to have a quorum of that committee to meet. So 3 of you and 2 of us, or
We'll
3
make-
of us and 2 of you, or however that works. Right?
We will make that happen.
Yeah, I just wanted, but I misspoke, because I said 2
Okay.
and 2, and that wouldn't
Okay.
do it.
Thank you. Okay, next agenda item, student behavior management. This is a discussion item. So, I'm glad to see that, well, actually, he's,
He left.
okay. Well, I don't want to steal this thunder, so, we had a presentation from the union president there a couple weeks ago, and talking about student discipline in the district, which I don't believe is, maybe in this room, there might be, well, I'm sure there is different opinions on this subject matter, about the extent of, if there is a problem, the extent of it, and how to go about addressing it. So, we, basically, Kim and I in a phone chat, just thought about adding it, to as a discussion point in the meeting, and even talking about, and potentially even school board goals. So this is, I think, an important item here for the school board to consider. We had a brief conversation with the superintendent on this subject matter, and so I thought it made sense to bring it to the school board for a general discussion on, those are nicer words that Dr. Metzler used, student behavior management, sounded a lot nicer than the word I used, student discipline. So I knew this is why he's a superintendent and I'm not. So, any rate, So I will kind of open up the floor here on this topic. Mr. Beal.
I'd like to ask that we bring Mr. Woodworth into this conversation.
Sure.
I mean, as the principal of the high school, I mean, I'm sure the TTA has one viewpoint, and he may or may not have another.
That's fine.
Is he done? Is he done?
Well, I mean, I was at the meeting, heard the presentation too, and what I was hearing was, a lot of conversation about support of teachers in regard to discipline. There's a difference in terms of what is the discipline like and how do teachers feel about how they're supported in discipline. So I have two things to really talk about. One is what our approach was going into the school year and how that was a new approach that we tried to try to improve on our discipline in the building. And what we did is to try to say, look, teachers need to do a very good job at Tier 1. The first place that discipline takes place has got to be in the classroom. So classroom teachers are responsible for things like phone calls home, conversation with students, working with guidance, basically following through with things that happen in the classroom that aren't within the rules that they're expecting for how their class goes. When they have a problem that can't be resolved by the means that they're using, we ask them to go to the dean, share with them what they've done, because they're their mentor and their evaluator, to say, look, this is what I've done. Should I refer this to administration at this point, to the assistant principals, or is there more that I should do? The dean then would give their advice on that. If it meant try this, go back and try that. If it meant bring it forward, go forward. This was a little different process than we had used before, which was a direct referral process, where when something happened in the classroom, the teacher could write a referral to the administration, they would respond. But we thought that we were getting a lot of things, especially with newer teachers, and we were a young staff, that really demanded that they work harder at resolving issues in their own classroom. Now, experienced teachers will tell you, they send very few people down to the office, because over time, they've developed strategies for having kids comply to the things that they want them to do, to engage them well in the class. They take pride in that. But that's work. That's a craft that has to be developed. It takes time to be that good. First-year teachers struggle with it. Generally, as you get more experience, you do better with that. If you don't, then we start to look at professional development needs and what do we have to do to help a teacher be able to handle their own situations. Now, there are exceptions. There are tough groups of kids. There are classes that have a tough dynamic. There are kids that are difficult. We have 60-something students with emotional disabilities in the school. Sometimes you get a few of those in a class. It can impact the class. There are situations where teachers need support, not just administrative support with discipline follow-through, but with managing classroom behavior because of what they're facing. So we have to deal with that. But when things come to the administrators through that process of working with the dean to us, then we can have a track record, we know what's been done, and we can then act appropriately. We know that they're invested in the solution, and then we can do a good job with it. That's hard work. And one of the problems we have, I think, at the high school, at least have had, which I think will be better next year, but has been a time crunch where students and teachers, they go 8 classes, 5 minutes in between. Teachers get a prep, a duty, and a lunch, okay? They might have another bit of time somewhere in the day, but it's limited time. So there's only so many follow-through situations that they're going to try to get done in a given day. So what we were asking them to do was difficult, especially if they had a heavy load of kids who needed that support. Had an impact over the course of the year, I think, on some teachers, and it's reflected in some of their comments about support. This wasn't working for all teachers. But overall, I have some statistics that show that it was pretty good in terms of helping with the total number of kids who needed discipline. Total discipline issues in 15-16 were 902. In 16-17, this past year, it was 655. So we had an improvement there. We had a 32% improvement in unexcused absences. We had 11% improvement in tardies. The detention level discipline in 2015-16, there were 460 administrative detentions given. In 2016-17, it was down to 408. Saturday detentions in 2015-16, 117. In 16-17, 86. Suspensions in 15-16, 141. In 16-17, 118. Combined consequences for low-level offenses, which resulted in warnings, mediations, restitution, or academic consequences, 15-16, 184. 16-17, 43. Attendance-related information, we changed our process for doing this. It was more direct from administrator, using Power School, not waiting for a referral and going after information right at the beginning of the day as soon as it appeared. Total disciplined class cuts was a decrease of 13%. 34% of the cuts were out of study lunches, which is a 15, 17, 20-minute time, where, kids are half the period in lunch and half the period in a study. And that's a difficult period of time for us in terms of management. We won't be doing that same system again. Discipline breakdown beyond that gets pretty detailed in terms of, how many of this or how many of that. And, we basically improved across the board in discipline in terms of totals during the year. That's not to say that teachers felt good about it. And I think that's really my message, is that it was a team effort. We were trying to work together to make sure that we weren't just having administration working directly with every situation, but that teachers got access to support and then brought it to us afterwards. So for some teachers that broke down, and later on in the year they were bringing it directly to us. So I'm proud of the work that the teachers did. I know it wasn't easy, but it does impact how people feel about their day when they're doing more work with difficult situations. I had an impact, I think, in that survey.
So you, before I open up, so how long have you been the principal there?
11 years.
There you go. So I'd say you pretty much know that school pretty well, I would think.
I've been at Timberlane for 38 years,
There you go.
37 years. Feels
So-
like 38.
You don't do math. Okay.
It's all right. So how do, I guess you're comfortable where this is going? How can the school board help?
Well, I want to continue to work with Ryan and the union. We've done well. We've met all year long. I have monthly meetings with the teacher reps, the union reps. We had a really good year. They were talking about, boy, it's improved this year. The survey was a little bit of a surprise to me. Mid-year, when we met and talked about how things were going, they were saying, it's better. This is good. This is working. We still had some teachers who were, complaining about specific types of, responses to some discipline situations. We tried to work through those together. At the end, the survey was a survey. I think it's an opinion survey. It's not the survey I would have, perhaps written the same way. It was a survey that was written, by the TTA and presented, never to us, never to administration. We heard it here. I got comments about it. I had some data given to a dean about it that then gave it to me. But in the past, when we did surveys like that, it was something that was done for us to work together with. It was for our information to try to make improvements. So I didn't get a chance, to see this before the board meeting.
No, that's fine.
So that said, I feel my process is still the same. It makes me pause for, consideration about what can we do to support teachers, more thoroughly in this process so they're not feeling so put upon, that or alone or in somehow underserved. So I do think going to blocks is going to help immensely. I think it gives us more time for teachers, which will help them with their part of that. It also cuts down on the number of transitions in a day And a lot of our discipline takes place around transitions. That's when kids are in the hall most, that's when they're gonna be late, that's when, they're gonna run into some conflicts with other students. The classroom management pieces, I really feel like that's a professional responsibility for teachers to develop skill set. And we'll give professional development support, we'll bring in people to help them with management, we'll send them to workshops. Anybody who's struggling with, commanding the attention of a class and the discipline of a class has some work to do, basically. So, that's an administrative perspective.
Okay. Well,
But
thank
I taught for many, many years.
Sure.
And, I know that there was an expectation that you got good at that. If you brought something down to the office, you wanted to make sure that it was something substantial. Because you didn't want to be binding up your administrators with low-level discipline concerns. After a while, that would work against you in two ways. One, your administrators, respect for the degree that you can handle what's going on in your class, but secondly, with your own students. If they feel that you can't handle them, that you got to go to an administrator every time that they say something or do something that's just left of right, then, I think they feel like that's going to continue, that, they lose confidence in the way that class is going to be. And I have teachers that give me 1, 2, 3 things a year, some none, and some I don't want to tell you. It's not about, it's not about 1, 2, or 3.
Well, before I open up, I guess a general, it's probably more to the superintendent, that since this topic's come, I understand that does each school, that they seem to do their own form of discipline, so it's not like a district-wide policy, or how they, like grammar school, middle school, high school.
I think to be a little more specific, Sandown North is using PBIS,
Correct.
but the rest of the district, based on their student behaviors, each process is a little different. I have reviewed the staff handbooks, and I'm a little confused about some of your statements, because I looked at this year's and the previous year's handbooks, but I'll leave that till later. But I'll go back to the clarification as to whether or not we have a district-wide policy, and maybe that's part of the issue and the disconnect, as students move from one school to another. Or,
Well, they don't move from one elementary school to another. So they move from an elementary school to a middle school to a high school. And a behavior management system that has been adopted by one school, that was site-based, and that was done through a grant through New Hampshire Responds. So much of the training and professional development was in place prior to me getting here. As far as behavior management systems, I do not believe they're age appropriate for grades 6 through 12. I do believe one was brought forward, and Ryan, you can help me, I know you weren't the president at the time, but
12 years ago.
yeah, 10, 11, 12 years ago, and the TTA overwhelmingly rejected at the secondary level a behavior management system, and I do agree with them. I don't believe it's age appropriate, and they felt it was, and for lack of a better word, insulting to their ability to manage their classrooms. Now,
what,
our
are we
elementary.
talking about the PBIS?
No.
No, it's
Oh,
different.
you're talking about some
there are
behavior
many.
management system.
There are many different management systems to select from. Why Sandown North picked PBIS and why Pollard may be a slightly different. I think it was based on their populations, based on resources available. There was not a district-wide, and quite frankly, there wasn't a district-wide anything. We can argue that, we can talk about curriculum, we can talk about lots of different things. My impression when I first got here, we were talking 3 different languages. We had elementary, middle, and high school. There was no K-12. So if we're moving in a direction where we're looking for a, for lack of a better term, code of conduct that's consistent, our elementary schools in our towns are very different. What Sandown needs is not quite what Atkinson needs. So we've respected that site-based management in terms of how they manage the behavior of students. Our curriculum is K-12. That's aligned. If this is the next step to start looking at aligning student management or student behavior management, that's certainly something we can look at. But I do believe our secondary 6 through 12 is very different than elementary, and our elementary schools are very different. So I've respected the fact that it's site-based, and they've done it a little bit differently at each school. I asked similar questions because I sat in on those New Hampshire Responds meetings with, you know, the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 kind of disciplines. I typically meet with level 1, level 2, level 3. Level 3 will come over before they re-enter after an infraction that we believe is a serious infraction. You know, so there are expected behaviors and unexpected behaviors. There's all kinds of different terminology that goes into these behavior management systems. It's a lot of training, and it's not something that a new superintendent or a new principal can come in and just flip the switch and change everything. So I did not see a problem at our elementary schools in terms of the way they manage student behavior. And our secondary level, we've had many discussions over my 5 years here about what we do grades 6 through 12. And so, you know, it's not a one-size-fits-all. I think Mr. Woodworth did a pretty good job. You know, when you take a pretty large staff of teachers, they all require something a little bit different. Some require absolutely nothing, and others require a tremendous amount of support, a different kind of support, so.
And we're fine with that, you know, in terms of, as a starting point with anybody, you know, discipline of high school students or commanding kids' attention or being comfortable with relationships that you need to count on to make a classroom, that takes time to get good at.
So, excuse me, so did that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. I know I kind of went
No, no,
on
that's-
a big circle on that, but hopefully it met what you
Mrs.
were looking
Sherman.
for.
May I ask Dawn a question?
You absolutely.
So Dawn, you talked about the deans being that support system and a go-to person. How about mentors? Are you using any kind of a mentoring system, you know,
For teachers in the first 5 years.
5 years?
And so they'll have a mentor. We train the mentors, not so much the high school, but the district will train mentors and pay them stipend to support a teacher as long as they need it. And some teachers move off of that, you know, before 5 years, and others will take longer. But, I mean, not longer than 5 years, but will take.
But that is a
longer.
level of support,
It's another
too,
level of
for-
support, yes.
Thank you.
So, you said that you went to a new approach this year in the high school, is that correct?
In terms of what our expectations, in terms of trying to lay out a process for teachers to try to follow, yes.
Correct. So what professional development did the teachers have with regards to that process?
We didn't think there was necessary professional development. This is something that was still there. Classroom responsibilities didn't change, the rules didn't change. So there was
Oh,
just
okay,
a matter
so
of
I'm not
that saying like.
understanding then, you're
as
saying you had a new approach,
the-
but
The
nothing
approach
changed?
was a matter of saying, before you bring something forward, we want to see what you've done. So there's a form, okay, there's a referral form. And on the referral form, it has an indication to put down all the things that led up to the point where you wanted to turn this over. Now, if you have a serious issue, somebody hits somebody, somebody is being abusive verbally to the teacher or to somebody else, it's disrupting the class, we expect them to call the office. We'll come down and we'll be in those situations. But things that, you know, would be a detention level, that kid's not doing what he's supposed to be doing, he's not paying attention perhaps, he's being disruptive in minor ways. Or in some ways, he's doing things that you can correct by getting them back at attention. They're playing with their cell phone instead of paying attention. Get the cell phone put away, get them back in. Those are conversations generally, if they're handled well. So those are the types of things we're looking for teachers to try to have their own consequences for. Sometimes it's a conversation, sometimes it's meet me after school, let's talk about this. Sometimes if it's an ongoing concern, it's a phone call home. So when those things aren't working, we say, go to the dean. Talk about what you've done. Make a decision about whether that should come to the administration or it's something else that you can try. So that's not professional development. That's a conversation, that's a process, that's a support mechanism to try to help them to get good at handling their own situations, which we think is a very critical skill that all teachers need to develop. So that's what we do.
Okay, so this year, it goes from the teacher to the dean to the assistant principal. You mentioned guidance counselors, but I don't see that in your levels.
No, again, it's an option. Tier 1, when I'm a teacher and I'm concerned about a student, whether it's academic or behavioral, and I'm having these problems, a guidance counselor can be a great resource. They might know more about what's going on with that student. That can be an enlightening conversation with a guidance counselor. Maybe understand a little better where the kid's coming from, or maybe alert the guidance counselor to something that they can help with in further conversations with the student.
I agree,
Not-
but I don't see that in the tiering of the
Right.
discipline.
Right, it's not written into as a discipline piece in our handbook, no. But it's something, it's a resource that we make sure that people are aware that they have for working with students that are having difficulties.
So you make them aware of that, new teachers aware of that when?
All the time. Look, everybody's there. Guidance has an opportunity to talk to teachers right at the beginning of the school year. Guidance is talking to each student. They're tracking how kids do. They're meeting with students who struggle academically and emotionally, who are having problems with discipline. That's a proactive piece that guidance counselors do by just looking at the referrals that we share administratively with them, and also by just having conversations with students about their performance.
So, I guess ultimately, what I see here is that you just threw out a lot of statistics, 32 to 11%, 460 to 408, 107 down to 86, showing that clearly there's been a lot of improvements. But when I look at the data, there's a disconnect between the drop in disciplinary actions and what this data is showing me from this survey.
Survey data, yeah.
The
Because
survey data, so-
Serves how it feels, I think. I think the survey, and Mike, correct me if I'm wrong. Survey,
I'll gladly
Oh,
rebut
I-
some of
but
the
the
points.
survey, from my take on it, because I was listening to the presentation, was that teachers weren't feeling supported in the discipline.
Well, I think there are two things from the survey. One, that there are challenges around support, but also that students, and to me this is two different things, that students are being held accountable enough for their own behavior. It's one thing for me as my own sense to be a chair and say, I'm supporting you, but the other part of that is I need to somehow make that student accountable. And these students aren't,
When things got
That's-
to us,
that's what-
when things got to administration and there was a referral, they were dealt with. And what I read to you was all things that administrators had done as far as discipline. That doesn't mean that teachers hadn't already given discipline. There's discipline beyond what's in those numbers.
I understand that, but there are, to me, two issues, because there's the support and there's the accountability.
I agree.
Correct me if I'm wrong,
I think
but
you're
aren't those
right. I
two
think
separate
those-
things?
Well, the accountability as far as accountability for students for their own behavior.
Yes.
Yeah, well, that's what teachers are trying to impress with, teachers work hard with that in their classrooms. And then, when they need our help, then we try to provide the next level of support on that.
Brian, if I could? I think, and most people understand that teachers go to school for, teacher preparation programs. And two things that they don't do real well, dealing with difficult students, they don't really do a lot of coursework on that, or dealing with difficult parents for that matter, making that difficult phone call. And these are some of the things that I think administrators have to help new and some seasoned teachers. But I think what we're trying to do here is we're trying to make absolute statements about qualitative data, about how people feel, and I'm not in this business to tell people that they feel wrong. It's too late. We have to figure out what made them feel that way. And then we have some quantitative data that I'm not gonna argue that it can't be skewed. It's how it's reported, right? So I don't think anybody's arguing the point that we have work to do. We do have work to do, and I've discussed some preliminary plans with how we may be able to support and address some of these things, and we can get there a little bit later after you goal set. But I think, I don't think that,
I think it's very possible that our discipline didn't change as much as those numbers indicate, because a lot of it didn't get reported because of the way teachers were handling it. So, the numbers they're indications, but it doesn't mean that every situation was handled well or that every teacher got supported enough. Part of it is something perhaps that we need to take a look at and say, what can we change from the way we were doing that's gonna make it work better? So that people are feeling more supported and that we're being more reactive in a way that's gonna change the behavior. And I'm all about that, but I'm.
I am too, and I'm in agreement with you. Don't, I'm
But-
trying to, we're
But
trying
you're
to help.
right, you're right in that there's a disconnect. That's why I presented it in a sense, is to say administratively, we're looking at our referrals, okay? I'm talking to teachers and I'm talking to the TTA. I'm getting a feeling about how things were going and feeling pretty good about it. I had some teachers who I knew were struggling because they came to me or to other administrators and then to me to talk about what was going on in their classes. We tried to work through those situations, and
Well-
in some cases, we were successful more than in others.
So the challenge is pretty clear, I think. If the data, if people feel a certain way and the data doesn't support it, the challenge, the goal really is that the data should support. So if we're showing improvements, people should feel like there's improvements.
Right.
And how do we goal set around that so that people feel the way the data, so that it's, I think, because there's a disconnect there, I don't disagree.
Another thing, Dr. So that came through in the presentation, which was, got us looking at it at the high school, at the administrative level over the last few weeks, which is, we have people that aren't getting the feedback on what the discipline was with a student. They're not finding it in Power School. They don't have the same view that we have. Like, we look at, I can go to Power School and we'll have the attendance. I can look at, I can pop that up and it will tell me if a class cut was disciplined. Because as soon as you discipline it, we change the code on it, add a D saying there was discipline. In a log entry under the student's record, we have that more detailed with an explanation of exactly what happened, and so we have that throughout their whole career. Teachers don't get that view. For confidentiality reasons, we don't want to open up, we haven't figured out a way to open up just a situation at a time through access with just a student and the thing that happened with that teacher. The data's there on each student. The question you have is, what should teachers have access to in that? And beyond that, what can we do to follow up with a teacher on a specific referral? Now, if I'm getting 1 or 2 referrals from a teacher over the course of a week or 2, I can keep pace with that and get back to them. If I have multiple referrals from a teacher, it's a little harder to get back to them, many, many times in a short period of time. But that's a challenge. That's something we can work on improving. We can try to think about, with the Ken Henderson or others, ways that we can make that more of an accessible bit of information, as long as we have appropriate safeguards about what else teachers or anybody else can see, because a lot of that is protected information. So, yeah, well, that's
Just a
exactly.
quick question. So, at what point during the process at the high school level are parents involved in,
Well, I think that
Is it
the
after you get the
teachers,
referral?
teacher to teacher, a lot of teachers will make a phone call home. Kid misses a couple homeworks. You say, hey, just so you know.
right,
Some teachers are more proactive about that at a very low level than others.
But
And
behaviorally-
it's a product of time and, the number of students you have. If I have 120 students, that's a difficult thing to keep pace with. If I have 80, okay, I think I have a shot. Those are different things. Different teachers have different constraints with their time.
right.
But parents, first of all, they have Power School, so they see everything that, happens with the grade and attendance from home.
But not behaviorally,
Excuse me?
but not behaviorally? If there's an issue with their child?
That doesn't show up on Power School, no.
Okay.
So when we have a consequence, for instance, a Saturday detention or certainly a suspension, there's a definite parent piece to that.
Right.
But in terms of detentions, not necessarily.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get an understanding of at what level are the parents involved? Because it would seem to me that, if there's an issue with the child, if it's, if there's an issue
Right.
that constitutes a teacher creating a referral, that would be the best time to bring a parent in so that they can work together to be able to address it together.
Right. We encourage teachers to make calls,
Right.
and involve the parents. And I think that the more that happens, the more likely, if you have a parent that's invested in what's going on, you're going to have an impact.
Right, if they
Absolutely.
know, they would certainly,
Absolutely.
sure.
Right.
Ryan, well, yeah, okay, one second. Ryan, could you come up to the table, please? Go ahead, Greg.
I just wanted to clarify a couple things.
Sure.
Did you say in years past that the administration would you able to get a look at the questions in the survey and kind of?
Well, Brian could talk to the process.
You seem like you were a little surprised at some of the questions.
Initially, well,
Yeah.
the first time we did this, it was done, Ryan gave me the results, and I was able to look at them, and then respond to the staff, to speak to the staff, and try to make adjustments based on their information. Okay? So that was kind of a direct piece. The board asked for that information. Later, Ryan shared it with them, and we've done that again this year. So Ryan can kind of fill in the blanks on that overview, but.
I'd like to just get some input, seeing how you both, you are the high school principal, you are the teacher, this is a discussion item here that I'd like to
Absolutely.
hear some input here.
Well, thank you. First, I do want to state clearly for the record what I said 2 weeks ago, which is that my people are professionals. They are doing their job. The data that came from the report was not from teachers who've been here for less than 5 years. It included people who've been here for decades, and they're the ones that were reporting these stories about not feeling supported and not having a paper trail of being supported when it came to student discipline. So this is not a new teacher issue. This is an everybody issue. The survey this year, as you all well know, was requested by the board with that short window. My board discussed how it would be released, and Ms. Belcher could attest to this. The final report wasn't ready until about a day before, as we were trying to put everything together for you. So I don't know how anything could get leaked, unless it was the 75% of the high school faculty being opposed to the enrollment action item. I think might be the only thing that may have been released, because nothing was released to anybody, except to Ms. Belcher, who got the PowerPoint when that was ready, and then given to all of you. So I wanted to clarify those 2 points regarding professionalism, because those are incredibly important statements that I think need to be reiterated, particularly for the record. And more specifically, if you have questions that I can refer to, I did report 2 weeks ago that a number of people indicated that, it's difficult to say when I think attendance being down is fantastic, issues being down is fantastic, but that's not what people were reporting on. People were reporting on discipline, student discipline, and consequences, not necessarily attendance. And the other issue that was raised, I'm trying to remember, was people not continuing to refer to the office because they felt that there was inadequate or unknown consequences. Again, and I thank Mr. Woodworth for pointing that out, again, that an administrator might divvy out a consequence, but if the teacher's never informed, perhaps the student tells them that nothing happened, teacher has nothing else to go on. And also for acknowledging that time as a resource is very critical. And when you have 45 minutes within a day to call all the parents or email all the parents that you do, that can become very problematic for some individuals who have a difficult
And that's the
caseload.
tip of the iceberg, isn't it? Because look, we're doing curriculum writing, we're doing
Exactly.
PLCs, we're doing developing performance task assessments, we're doing Achieve, we're prepping people for a lot of things at the same time. So teacher time is of the essence, and it does play a factor in this.
And again, thank you to Dr.
Well-
Metzler for stating that there will be no new, other than what's already on the table, no new initiatives.
Okay, well, listen, I think, obviously, thank you for the input, because I didn't hear anything come out of anyone's mouth that did not recognize that people are professionals. I think everyone in the room knows that people are professionals. So, sounds to me like there's a work in progress here, and that's why it's on the agenda, and so I guess you guys have to keep working, and that's kind of what this is here for. This is why I want it on the agenda. Kind of a key thing, as far as I'm concerned. I've heard about it for years, so I'm glad to see it's constantly being reviewed and being worked on. And that's again, it's a discussion. That's what we're here for.
The good thing about the survey, from my perspective, is that it takes the veneer off of things. So I have, something more to look at than what I am thinking just from the numbers I look at. So it takes it out of the context of, when I hear that teachers aren't feeling supported, think, okay, I have to work on that. As much as any particular discipline statistic, it's a matter of shoring up the communication, the confidence, the trust in those situations, and I feel we can do that.
Mrs. Green, you had a point you wanted?
Thank you. I have a few things to say, and I hope you'll just bear with me. So I'm going to start with a little story about my own son. When he was in second grade, he was put in a classroom with a brand-new teacher. He was a mature individual, but he was in his first year of teaching. And this, it wasn't around here, it wasn't Timberlane, it was, and that class was composed of a group of very difficult boys. And they fed off each other and were a tremendously difficult discipline problem. So my son spent a lot of that year sitting on a bench outside the principal's office. I'm not proud of it, but that's the case. And I certainly hope that that teacher who was struggling with developing his skills and the fact that he had a classroom that should never have been composed in that fashion in the first place. I presume the other teachers didn't want these kids in their class. I hope that that teacher did not feel that the administration was looking down on him because he had to appeal to the principal to warehouse some of these kids outside his office. Because that was the best thing to do for the rest of the class. And it's quite possible that even a very seasoned teacher in that situation would have had an extreme challenge with these kids. And I'm sad to say that one of those young men died of a drug overdose, in his last year of high school. So these were challenging kids. And, fortunately, my son and a few of the others turned out just fine, and I mean admirably, actually, and, some of them didn't. But my point is that there were elements in that classroom that were not of the teacher's making.
Right.
And that I hope that by having the children sit out, that he was not in any way penalized or assessed badly or had any consequences administratively for that action, because what he did was really, truly in the best interests of the entire class.
Gotcha.
So it concerns me a little that teacher, and I'm hearing that there's an expectation that the teachers are managing their own classrooms without appeal to the administration.
I
I feel-
understand your question, your point, and honestly, unaddressed, you're right, that would be a mistake. We try to get a pretty good understanding of who's in a class. I wouldn't make that judgment if I had a class that was untenable about the students to say that the teacher was at fault for that. You're right, they don't create the grouping. There are products of what level a class is, how many offerings of it are, who it appeals to, that sometimes does impact who's in there, the balance of situations like that. But that said, you're not wrong in that that's an administrative responsibility to be able to see exactly what's going on, work with the teacher to try to fully understand it and to support the teacher or change the dynamic of the group.
Good, thank you. The other thing is that it seems to me that all new teachers should be getting professional development for classroom management, because we know that's not taught in teacher college. We know that. So that should be a baseline professional development to me.
It's part of the mentoring program.
Part of the mentoring process.
So that is dealt with. They see video, they do, discuss that in small, groups and try to make sure they're communicating on what the teachers are experiencing. Try to help them through that.
Okay, but that's based on a mentor's ability for classroom management. That isn't a consistent program of classroom management that's taught to everybody consistently. We have a director of professional development. I'm surprised that that isn't like a foundation course in professional development.
Yeah, we try to follow what the staff is looking for in professional development and as well as things that we see. And there's a committee for setting those activities, those options, and there are teachers that can go beyond what we have and use professional development time elsewhere to get support in an area that they feel they want. Honestly, I like Ryan said, I don't have a lack of confidence in the teachers. I feel like we have improved. I feel like we're going in the right direction with discipline. I don't think it's an easy process, and I think that in many cases, we've gotten feedback that says that people were uncomfortable with the degree of support they had. So, I think that whether it's professional development, it's conversations, people feeling that they can trust us with their truth. We seem to be concerned about whether teachers felt comfortable going to an administrator that might be their evaluator, that it would negatively impact them to be able to report that they need help with something.
Right.
That's not the building that I want to have. If that's something that's going on, then we need to make inroads into that. And that's relationships. That's me. That's me giving people confidence that, we'll help them with those things. The types of issues that have caused teachers to have discipline have had nothing to do with student discipline. In terms of any, negative impact on evaluations, the worst thing that I've seen happen is to give somebody, put somebody onto an improvement plan for some aspect of their performance, and then that's a support plan, and then we've had people work right through those to improve their performance, and it's been a helpful piece. So if we're, through evaluation, if we're finding that the teacher has a weakness, we have a remedy for that to support them. We don't threaten a teacher. We try to get them to buy into a process to improve on that, whatever the skill might be that is going to help them to have more success with student behavior or whatever the issue might be.
Okay, I have 2 more points. I'm sorry. Bear with me. The other thing I heard was that, as I understood it, the discipline goes from first the classroom level,
Right.
and then if it needs to escalate, it goes to the dean, the teacher's dean.
That would be the first resource, yes.
Okay, and for some reason, that doesn't seem to be working very well.
Not as well. Well, it's working in terms, it's hard to say. You might be right, that maybe it's not working for all teachers. Some people might have a hard time working with their particular dean, for instance. That could be an issue if there was a relationship issue there, a trust issue there or something. I think we have, tremendously conscientious deans who care deeply about learning and teachers and whatnot, but certainly if a teacher came to me and said, I'm having trouble with, my dean and, I need to have somebody else help me with this, I would help them with that.
All right, and then the other thing is that the data can be interpreted in 2 ways, as I'm sure we're all very aware. On the one hand, it looks like it might be that discipline incidents are declining because there's less need for discipline, or that there's just less incidents of discipline.
Either way, right? It could be, you can look at a number of things there.
I'm beginning to worry that it's an indication that there wasn't enough discipline taking place. Rather than
Where?
reading it as an improvement, I'm seeing it as,
Discipline.
that's a pretty different change, and maybe things weren't happening that should have been happening.
Okay?
So
I
that's
think-
why I want that,
This
I
is
want to
what
be.
we're talking about. We're talking
Okay.
about that gap that you're talking about. Okay, what don't we know, and how can we impact that, that set? If we have people beyond what we're seeing in terms of things escalating to, I might have brought one person to see Dr. Metzler this year. We might have had 2 level 1s, and we really had less severe discipline. That said, whatever the greatest discipline you have, whatever those issues are that are making it hard for teachers to feel successful in the classroom, those are the most important things that we have to deal with. So we have room to improve. I'm not seeing it zero. I'm not seeing, that we've wiped out discipline issues. It's an ongoing, piece of work. And each staff, each administrative unit has to work to each other's strengths and try to make an impact in this. We went to the staff early on and said, let's try this. Let's try to work together on this. I think it will help us. I have got 2 assistant principals who are doing discipline to support, this process. Let's try this. This is where we ended up with it. If I'm going back to the drawing board, I'm sitting with Ryan, we have to make some tweaks on that to support teachers better. If we have to add a level to this, if we have to say, let's meet each quarter and take a look at where we stand and see if there's that's what we should be doing.
Well, that was gonna be, like, sounds to me like, again, this was a discussion item, that the school board, I think, would like to get updates, because obviously, you're almost at every school board meeting, and you're gonna be at most school board meetings. And I think it'd be wise for us to have periodic updates on what is going on.
I said I'm here. Yeah.
But, can I, just the point, I think we're losing sight of the fact that Ryan and Jen both said there has been improvement, we're moving in the right direction,
I agree.
right? That's what
On,
you said.
on a number of other measurements, yes.
Yeah, on some of the measurements, right? And so I think we're making some leaps about what the deans are working out. I could make the same argument that the discipline went down because the deans have been working really well, and that's why there's less discipline reports. So we can make all kinds of leaps. I think it's very simple. I said it earlier, about an hour ago, right? Clearly, how we feel about it and the data is not lining up. So we need to find out. I make it simple, right? When I asked you something, and this has nothing to do with discipline, I said, how do the teachers want to open up? Here are 2 choices. Go tell me how they feel, right? And you came back with clear data that said a majority of the teachers would prefer this over this. So what do? We did what the majority wanted. So the challenge here is, let's go back and find out if they can figure out to tell us, they have told us through the survey to some degree, but let's confirm it. What do you think are the reasons that how you feel isn't necessarily lining up exactly with the data? Put a plan together by level in buildings to see if we can connect those, and then let's execute. This is not rocket science, right? It's, right? I think.
And we're gonna do this over the course of the summer, so that we have a new plan in place come the fall?
Well,
And back to that, because you just, a little while ago, said that, we've looked at curriculum as
K to 12.
moving as a whole unit, but we have not looked at discipline as.
You tell me you want a K-12 system, I'll put a
Well,
K-12 system in
I'm
yesterday.
not saying that, I'm just saying
Not
that
the
we
right
have
thing to
not-
do.
Wrong
No,
thing
I'm
to
not
do.
saying that, I am not saying that, I'm saying that we have not had a contiguous look at discipline in the middle and high school, these are your words, in the last 10 or 11 years, is that correct?
No,
At
what I said was they brought a behavior management system to them that they did not want. And I want you to picture what that is, right? We've all been through this. This is like when somebody says, I hate math. No, Kim, what you meant to say was you don't like math as much as reading. That's that's not
No, I know.
appropriate for the secondary
No,
level.
I'm not saying that it is,
And,
but.
and I don't know where you extracted that from, because Don can attest to this, right?
I'm not saying that you haven't had it in place, but you've said that we've looked at curriculum across.
Yep, curriculum's a
the
system,
district,
K to 12.
And we have not, have we taken a look at discipline across the district since you've been here?
I'll let-
Across the district, since you've been here.
I know my answer. I'll let Don answer. Go ahead, Don. Why
Well,
don't you tell
Don's the
her?
high school principal. She's talking about how to do
Yeah,
it.
no,
I'm talking
but he's the
across-
only one here. So we can start with,
Okay.
Well, if you're saying, I've been working with the elementary teachers and the middle school teachers to try to be consistent in the way we're dealing with it. We have a district, handbook, and each level has its own school handbook. So we publish ours, we follow it. Our discipline falls in the ranges that are in that book. So we have a guideline right there. And it's flexible, because not all situations are the same.
and I changed the code of
that's what
conduct
we have.
became the rights and responsibilities of all students in this district, K to 12. That's a consistent document.
So
So
it's a yes, then we have
So we
something.
have, we
I
have
know my
something
answer,
that we
yeah.
use, yes.
But as far as, you know, everybody has different styles, and to have a management system forced on you that doesn't necessarily fit your style, we're trying to be respectful every teacher does it just a little bit differently. How do we engage students? How do we intellectually stimulate students? And Donna brings up a good point. There's even another point beyond that in terms of how teachers are trained. You know, during the ed reform that went on, it was really, hey, go out and find the brightest people and get them to be teachers. A lot of those people did not go to school to be teachers. And now they're in our classrooms, and they're very bright people, and they certainly are intellectually stimulating for students. But managing a classroom and developing powerful lessons to reach all kids, in a heterogeneous or a homogeneous group, depending on how it's configured. To Donna's point, again, if you have kids that are on levels that are so far apart, it's very difficult for a teacher to reach all levels, you know. So, and I'm not suggesting we track students either, but we're well aware of the challenges, I think. But I think what you'll say, where's the plan? Well, right now, they're putting their school action plans together. So this would be a clear direction, obviously, for me to say, listen, as part of your school action plan, I expect to see a district-wide initiative, like we did with the tripod survey, which was student feedback, about how we're going to address, you know, TTA's concerns through our school action plans.
And when are those completed?
We typically
The school
pres-
action plan.
Yeah, we typically present those in the fall, like
Okay.
right away. Depending on that's something we'll have to talk to you about outside of this meeting is, you know, what do you want for presentations? Because typically we would do all 5 elementary schools, and then we did secondary schools. I did program and action plans as well, which would be the athletic department and the music department, and they would present those. And then, depending on the configuration of the board and the will of the board, whether you want those presentations and then followed up in the spring with report out on your goals. We got away from that the last couple of years, but we did that pretty consistently for my first few years here. We're still doing that work, it's just whether the board wants those presentations or not. They take a lot of time, but you get to see in depth. You know, it usually has a student achievement. Usually there's something about climate and culture in each school, and each school is a little bit different. It could be environmental education, and you'll see they kind of work through my goals into your goals. So that's why I was waiting for your goals. We'll see my goals, but those plans are currently being worked on, and they would be presented in the fall if that's what you want. They're going to be presented to me at SLT, whether you want to see them or not. That's your call.
Can I ask just one question? Who evaluates the high school teachers? The assistant principals or the deans? Who's doing your evaluation on an annual basis, Mr. Richmond?
It
I
is
just
different
asked
by
you
depart-
just
right, it
because.
is different by department. For me, it's Scott Strange.
So he was.
For associate
So the deans are not your evaluators?
The deans are evaluated.
He was a dean, so he was my
Oh, so
evaluator
he-
as a
that's right, he
dean,
was a
and
dean.
then.
So the deans
So
are
again,
evaluating.
that piece that Mr. Woodworth referenced earlier of, you know, if you have somebody who's your evaluator and you're looking for support from them as well, you know, that might be an impediment to you, not to me. You know, to Ms. Green's point earlier, amongst my degrees is a bachelor's of education, and I did get classes in behavioral management
So did I.
in my degree. So it does depend what program you go through. But
So
I have a
2 years
bachelor's of
ago,
science.
when you did not have deans, or however many years ago, who was your evaluator?
that was Brian O'Connell.
So that was an assistant principal. So now you've put your evaluator right above the teacher the teacher is supposed to report a discipline issue to the same person that's their evaluator.
And
I mean,
I think
that
you're
might be part of the issue.
where I think you're going with that goes back to my point that I made 2 weeks ago, that, you know, what I personally envision what the deans should be doing is being overwhelmed by all the other things that they're being expected to do. So that piece of academic support and development and things like that, I think that speaks back to the point that I made 2 weeks ago at the report.
If you want the system to do what you're talking about, because I came from a high school that was organized that way, there was a freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior dean that just did discipline. And then there was a department head in every single department, which would be the dean of, it'd be the English dean, but they call them a department head. It separated out discipline from curriculum leadership.
I'm not asking for it to be done anyway.
No, no,
In particular,
no,
I'm
but I'm
just
saying
saying,
that.
I'm
no,
just,
that separates those two issues, so that isn't the same person, right? I talked to one person about curriculum and instructional strategies. I report kids to another person who helps me with the management of the students, who has nothing to do with my evaluation, right? It's that, but that's more personnel, is what that is.
well, it's a new system, so now there's, anyway, I've said enough.
Peter?
It's interesting. So I've never worked in the education system. I've worked out in the private sector. My 37 odd years. But the person I've reported to has always reviewed me, and he was also the person I would bring problems to. So that's typical. That's the way it works almost everywhere, it seems, except in education. Now, of course, very early on, I learned that I don't bring problems to my boss. I bring him a situation with my recommended solution. Okay, but nonetheless, it's the person who does the reviewing has always been the person that I'd bring issues to.
To be
Always.
fair, though, there is a significant difference in the corporate or private sector world and when you're dealing with 100 human beings within a single day and their parents and families and all the issues and drugs and everything else that are impacting their lives is significantly different than, and not to belittle anybody, because I think that all fields are of equal value, but, it's significantly different than, a computer programming issue that may be, rectified with a new code. That doesn't, I wish it worked that well with a child, but unfortunately we can't code the kids with ones and zeros.
Yeah,
I think we can take a look at structure, certainly. When I first got to Timberlane, it was a department head structure. Department head was an evaluator. And sometimes they were a primary evaluator, sometimes they were a secondary evaluator. We had different ways of carving that up between administration and secondary level department heads. Department heads taught a reduced load. They did evaluations. They mentored. They were responsibility, for the curriculum. They had that oversight. The deans are very similar, but they also have 6 through 12 responsibility, and the focus in the last few years has certainly been on curriculum development, and we've seen the great results from that because in almost world record time, you've gotten a complete rewrite. We're getting to another stage of implementation now.
Right.
And I do think that it will impact the degree to which teams are going to be accessible and perhaps more supportive to teachers. So we'll see.
Steph?
So thank you both very much for giving us your perspective and your information. So I've been giving this some thought based upon the data that you provided, both of you. And it seems to me that there are 3 issues. So you have the issue of the reporting of events, the issue of accountability, and the issue of supporting the teachers, right? So it would seem to me that, what was mentioned earlier about the idea of an age-appropriate, systematic approach would be really helpful. It would be really helpful to you. It would really be helpful, I think, district-wide, and I think it would also really support the teachers. So I would be in support of that. So that's my perspective. Thank you.
Okay. Well, again, thank you for coming in. I think, again, it's,
Thank you.
obviously we'll be receiving periodic updates from both you individuals, and appreciate the perspective, and you guys coming down here on a nice June evening here.
I just want to add to that I know, Mr. Richmond, you said that the TTA would be supportive of, any goals that the board set in terms of this, and certainly I would be interested to know what sort of action, or how can the board help in this situation? I mean, I know your administrators are now aware and that, but how can the board assist the TTA at this point in time?
I
Sounds like
think
there's a
in
plan.
terms of the role of the school board, I mean, go back to, in our presentation, the recommendations, 3 or 4 that we made to the board. I'm always a huge fan, and anytime that I've ever sat in on an assistance plan meeting, I've always hammered home clear and measurable goals. I think right now there's a district goal of referrals will be down by so many %. But as we see with, the reporting from our survey, referrals could be down. That doesn't mean that there's actually, a marked improvement in terms of behavior or of climate. I would want to see goals that would support the work of both the teachers and the administration together, developing a system that works for, and Dr. Messer and I have talked about this, the middle school, it does seem to be, it's a very different animal, and I know Ms. Sherman can
Correct.
speak to that. I think the team structure is a huge help there, that level of support with each other that you don't get at the high school. Support within the team, within the teachers and the team, they all have the same students. And you get that a little bit with Freshman Academy right now. I think the best year that we ever had in Freshman Academy was the year that the students were all hand-scheduled because we knew the issues that were coming up from the middle school. But you don't get that outside of ninth grade for resource issues. I mean, that's an incredible undertaking. But I would want to see goals and action items from the board that are directed towards supporting whatever we deem as age appropriate, facility appropriate, and that works. You know, the outcome that I want to see, you know, what is the end goal? I think that's really what we should be looking at, is that on our survey, and, you know, if there's ever issues with the survey that we develop for our own internal means, UNH Survey Center does a fantastic survey. Nashua School District just did it. It is really extensive on school climate. The report was 244 pages long, so good bedtime reading. So if the board was interested in paying for that, I think you would get a lot of really helpful data, but that would also be, you know, scientifically acquired, trackable data on a lot of issues. So we want to get to a point where the reports that we're getting back are that people feel, yes, I am supported in my classroom and I feel safe in my school, that I feel that, and that I recognize that we are a positive environment for students and professionals, which is a very difficult thing to measure. And I think that's why I noted the UNH Survey Center, because I think you need to take a lot of different measurements in order to really understand something like that, more than we as an organization are capable of doing, again, because of resources. Does that answer your question? I know that was a complicated answer. There was no, like,
Yeah.
I want you to do this, because, again, when you're working with, you know, teenage human beings and lots of different kinds of personalities, it's not easy, clear-cut. You know, I look forward to exploring options with the superintendent on what we can implement at the secondary level. But I would hope to see things come out of this body that support that.
Well, they have to support both, obviously. It's got to
That's why it would be with the administration.
administration and
Right.
team, right,
Mr. Boyle?
yes.
Thank you. To get back to Mrs. Dubé's point about a systemized program, I know that the program at Sandown North, it can be configured for a district-wide program. So I just want to know, I mean, obviously, I went to their website, and if they're offering it for middle school and high school, obviously, it can't be babyish at that level. So what would be the objection or the considerations against trying to roll out a program such as they have at Sandown North,
Yeah.
district-wide?
I don't see a huge issue with it in concept. For instance, I do think that if you're going to have a solution to a problem, whatever the problem is, that everybody recognizes and wants to do something about, if everyone buys into dealing with it, you're going to have success. So it takes that buy-in. PBIS achieves that buy-in. Collectively, they make a decision about what is the one thing we're going to do, what is everybody's role going to be in getting that done, and everybody has to be on board. One of the hardest things we have to do at the high school, dealing with 1,200 kids or 1,150 kids, whatever we're going to be next year, you know, is getting the kids and all of the teachers to make those decisions about what's most important and to stay on board with the process. When things start to break down, it breaks down out of sight and it grows. It's a problem. Everybody has to be consistent and stay on it. So whether it's attendance, wearing hats, using a cell phone, whatever the rule's gonna be, whatever the expectation is gonna be, you have to be consistent with that. High school teachers traditionally are individuals who like to command their own rules in their own room, their own idiosyncrasies, their personality, their talents, and everything are reflected in the way they run their classrooms. They don't all want to march by the same drummer. But if they want to change something specific, they have to sacrifice some of those things to do it. I think our biggest challenge is saying, okay, this is the one thing we're going to do, and we're all going to be on board, we're all going to do this thing. Because in doing that, you're going to have a split. You're going to have people who are doing what they don't want to do, and some people who love exactly what they're doing and everything in between. So that's a challenge. I'm willing to do it anyway, if the thing is that important. I just think we have to choose wisely about what it is that we're going to be going after, make sure it's something that we all really are invested in. And that's in my opinion, what the thrust of PBS is, or any of the system management pieces, is setting priorities, getting everybody to understand their responsibility for it. And that's what I was trying to do with the process that we set in place last year. The difference is, it was something that me and the team devised, the team and I devised. It wasn't something that the staff said, let's do this. The difference in PBIS is that it's a collective decision. So that's what we have to achieve. We have to be able to agree on the thing that we're going to chase down, get one thing done right, then move to another.
There are some things that are good for districts K-12, and some things need to be site-based.
Right.
This is clearly something that needs to be site-based. For everybody that likes that, I hear people that are adamantly against something like that. I hear from parents. I hear from parents in Sandown that don't like it, right? So we count on the staffs of those particular schools. I mean, Principal Georgian does a great job. That was a decision that school made.
That's correct.
That works for that school. Atkinson does things very differently. And so I'm not sure. I think we're, and then I'd be breaking my word to you. Here's an entirely new initiative, right, that requires all kinds of training. I don't think the problem's rooted that deeply. I think it's more of a secondary issue, and I think we need to come up with a very, very simple plan to address, what your concerns are, and have it in an action plan, and so we can talk and figure out what made people feel that way. And if it's as clear as this, if it's clear as teachers need to know within 48 hours what action, if any, we're taking for a referral, and we need some system in place that gets that information back to the teachers, and you say, you do that, we're good, right? If teachers said, that's the most important thing to me, I just need to know within 24 hours or 48 hours or whatever it is, well, then that's what we'll do. But we need to figure out that piece out so that we can solve that. And that's not a district-wide thing. I could have elementary people in here, and there's no issues at all in their buildings, right?
Yeah,
So why would we turn the whole district upside down because we have it's a secondary issue, right?
That's what the data,
I think that's what the data said to me. I had some of the other things,
particularly,
Yeah.
It was high school.
Well, anyhow.
It's not middle? We're not middle school?
Middle did score higher.
That's
Higher than
unusual,
high school,
too.
in terms of feeling supported, yeah.
Higher, middle schools
I'll take one more, then we're gonna
higher
wrap
on
up
feeling
this.
supported.
Thank you, Mr. Boyle.
I'll take one more, Peter, and we'll wrap this thing up.
Thanks. I guess what I heard, I think it was a very good conversation this evening. We kind of went around, and that was good. It was, excuse me, necessary, it's useful. But I think what I heard at the end of the day about, when asked, what do you folks want, what do you want the school board to do now, as far as goals or whatever? What I heard was, we want your attention on this problem. We're working it as a group. When I say we, I mean you folks, okay? When we decide what we want to do, or we'll let you know when we want you to support it. But I didn't hear any immediate action for the board tonight. It was let us do our thing, let us get together, figure out what we want, and if we need your help in it, we as a group will let you know. Is that a fair simplification?
I think one piece to add to that is, I think an action tonight that you could take is a pledge that you would support what we mutually agree is necessary, particularly if it involves resources, that you would, if we have come to the resolution that this is something that is vital and necessary, and we think and believe will address the issue, we would want your support, and that is an action that you could take tonight, that you would support any decision, what we would come to mutual agreement on.
Of course, that's also a blank check.
Well, that's just, I was gonna say,
And we can't take action anyway,
Yeah.
because it's not on the agenda
Well-
as an action item.
right,
Well, but it could have fallen into the school board
Well,
goals
that's-
right underneath
that's-
it, which is an action.
well,
So-
that's the thing.
And that's
That's-
and that's why I,
Why that was on there.
that's why it's on the, so,
Answering your question.
so,
fair enough,
I-
fair enough.
If I could, I would just like to add just one other thing. I think it's important for us to get some more information about that system and how it could possibly work district-wide, because I
What
understand
system?
the
Oh, the one
PBIS
in
system.
Sandon.
You know, it was very clear that it was working incredibly well at Sandown North. And it seems to me that if it's a system that's and I understand the demographics, I get all that. But I think that if it's a system that's working really well in one school, and it's a system that is capable of being district-wide, I think it's important for us as a board to look at that and see if it's something that is worthwhile.
The one caution that I would make, I'm not opposed to looking at any system or any program. But again, when you're dealing with human beings, what works with one group may not work with another. I would be a little bit trepidatious about the board saying that they want to go with a program and force that program on the entire district, when we need to identify where the needs are and what would best address. So I am open to the idea of looking at multiple different programs to see what would work
that
best.
Systematically, I think we need to have, you all need something in place to help you.
We want consistency, that's
Right.
for sure. Yes.
Yeah, that particular program, again, was New Hampshire Response. It's a grant that no longer exists. It was very expensive, and it took many, many years. And schools picked what they wanted as part of that grant.
So all
Individual
four
sites.
schools had that opportunity?
They all looked at what they needed, and they selected what they needed, and we spent a tremendous amount of resource
How much
is
was
on
it?
it. It was a lot of money. It was a grant that no longer exists. New Hampshire
Everybody got
Response.
something different.
Everybody had the opportunity to meet as a staff,
Yeah.
have input from the staff selected what they felt like they needed. I'm not convinced that system is why the survey results in a particular school.
We
Not
worked
convinced.
hard with New Hampshire Response to develop an RTI process, which really is what we're talking about in terms of response to intervention process, where whether it's about academics or it's about discipline, basically you're setting up tiers of responsibility. And that's what we did for this year. What we did is adopted an RTI approach. Did we do it well? Well, how did it feel? I mean, those are good questions. I don't think it was a bad approach. I don't think that it had the impact we had hoped it would in terms of teacher satisfaction. And you can debate the statistics, but, you know, in terms of evidence, in terms of disciplinary referrals that came out of it, there was improvement using a system, an RTI system. That said, this is where we're at. We're dealing with the after effects of 1 year of a new program implemented how it was with the people we have. The difference in PBIS, though, is that that's not something that is administratively decided. That's a group conversation. I'd like to get to some of those aspects of this so that there's buy-in right from the get-go in terms of people feeling supported. But it won't be, okay, the most important thing that we have to deal with is cell phones. Or, you know, it's not going to be that specific. It has to be more about,
Disrespect.
you know, behaviors and respect and responsibilities and, you know, basic accountability for behavior.
Right.
well, again, thank you, gentlemen, for coming in, because I think this gets us right into the next item. So you both
Thank
welcome
you.
to sit right there. That-
Thank you.
I think if, so, the fact that everyone's here, this group, just so you know, we're not in here not to support Timberlane, that's what we're here for. That's pretty much what we do. So, I think this, I put this action item on the agenda to see if it would be the pleasure of the board to formally address this one as a goal, or we can address it just through quarterly updates, you know.
think we can just address it through quarterly updates. Now that we've been sensitized, and I think we understand what's happening in the schools, as far as the school's administration and TTA working together to formulate a plan, as long as I think we stay on top of it, we're good. And then when they need something, they'll ask, as long as we're still listening. So we got to keep listening.
Agree, Mr. Chairman?
I'm gonna agree with Mr. Belo. I think what we have set out for school board goals for next year is already pretty long and lofty and complicated. And I really don't think that we need to write a school board goal, other than to say collectively, we're supporting the high school and the TTA in their efforts. So I'm agreeing with Peter.
Okay. Dawn?
I'd like to make a motion that we've received monthly reports on police calls to the middle school and the high school and suspensions, so that we have some data to assess for ourselves what the behavior issues are at the school.
I thought there wasn't, you have a feeling that there is, there are,
Conspiracy?
no.
Police
no.
calls?
Do you,
Police responses. I'd just like to know what they
What,
are,
for-
a monthly report.
hang on a second.
Please.
Please.
On that point, because anytime that we have something that would involve the police, and the police involved is going to be around drugs and alcohol or violence, any illegal activity, there's an ED 317 form that's filled out and registered with the superintendent's office. So that's a specific number of incidents.
Great.
And so that's a very easily traced piece. I think we had about 17 this year. Total, all those things combined. So, you can get that raw data. You can't get the names. That's all confidential information, but you can get that type of basic information. How many suspensions did we have, or how many, of this, that, or the other thing have. We have to fill a report to the state. That's also public information. That's something that's published on the Department of Education website.
And what's that called?
It's a school safety report with the Department of Education.
So, to understand, so currently, within the system here, there are these report upstairs in the building.
We have to
Alright.
file, it's the law, we have to file that, we have to notify the police, we have to write a report in the form called an ED 317 form about those, those specific things.
So it's a school report or a police report?
It's a school report to the police and
Okay.
to the SAU.
So we have them.
We have.
Super. So, and there was 17 of them last year. Okay? So you want them monthly?
I would like,
I can't bring those reports here.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
You're
I
not gonna
wouldn't.
get the report.
Absolutely
I don't know
can't.
why I don't know why we'd want them monthly.
Not
I
the
didn't
report,
ask for the
just
report, I
number.
just asked for the statistics.
Oh, okay.
So just,
Go
I
ahead.
just want a cold statistic, like 3. So he's gonna come in, or Dr. Master's gonna say 3. So I'm gonna ask 3 drug overdoses, 3 suicide attempts, 3 violent things, 3 teachers who went down in their classroom and required police and an emergency. The
can't.
number 3, he can't share that, so it's gonna be just a bare number. I don't,
Why can't we know those kind of things?
You can't know individuals. That's all.
I couldn't even talk to you about particular cases because that would remove you from the process of an appeal and any kind of disciplinary action. So I can't discuss it with you at all.
I just
You know,
concerned about the
I'm so
numbers.
sick about hearing that excuse. We're entitled to information, statistical information on how our schools are running with respect to student incidents. And there's no reason why we shouldn't be getting it, and it's one of the hard pieces of data that we have to judge our success in managing student behavior. So why would we
You can be
deny
sick of it.
ourselves?
You can be sick of it all day long. The minute I bring it to you, you are no longer the body that they can appeal to.
Well-
If I discuss it at all, you will be biased, and you won't be able to be the deciding
And
vote.
how many times has this board had an appeal in the last 25 years?
Well-
Never.
I don't know, how do you know?
Wait a minute. You're telling me like just to get, if you just came in and gave us a number?
Not a number, I said if I discuss any case
Oh,
with you in any
that's-
detail at all.
She's just talking about a number. So another.
No, she's not. No, she's not. You're not
A
listening.
number and a specific
She wants to know what.
All, I'm hoping all we're asking for is a number, because I just heard from the high school principal, it's a total of 17 for the year.
But he
So,
didn't say 17, blah, blah, blah,
I don't
blah.
care.
Well,
Not 17 a week, it was 17 a year.
15 drug-related incidents, 2 violence, episodes of violence.
Yes, but the problem is-
1 episode of physical injury, you
That
know?
one physical injury.
Kim, will you
just-
explain it to her?
No,
I can't
no.
explain it to her again. Please, just explain it
Anyway,
to her.
I have a motion, it hasn't been seconded.
What was your motion?
Did you just second it without knowing what it was?
question.
He had a question. He didn't second
I
the motion.
thought you- I
What was the
heard you
motion? Did you
say
read it
it
again?
seconded.
My motion was that we're to get a monthly report of student, of a school safety report and police incidents.
So what Dawn said, will that give you enough?
Well, it's better than nothing. I mean, I think we should be aware of what's happening, so we can judge if we are really getting a handle on this problem or not.
I think you are aware of what's happened. I think that's why, when I just heard 17, when you spread 17 incidents over something the size of Timberlane School District for a year, I don't think that's a lot.
But those are cases that rise to the level of having a police officer involved. I personally would like to find out more about these referrals. That's just.
They don't all
I-
involve a police officer.
Right, no, that's what I'm saying. But I would like to find out how many referrals there are in the course of the year and what percentage of those the parents are involved in. I personally would like to find out that information, because I think that, for me, is more indicative of what's going on, as opposed to, some of these other ones that get to that level.
So of the 900 referrals, you want to know how many times parents were called?
Yeah.
We don't track they don't track that data.
You don't track how the.
I don't.
parents-
I don't.
Somebody's gonna track how the parents are getting in
When
touch with.
What, their phone calls? A teacher, you want them to log in when they call the parent?
I think there should
And
be
then
some
you want
record
that?
keeping.
Bring that to Kim.
No, I'm saying, I think there should be some
No,
record keeping of.
that's not helpful.
Wow, if you've got 900 referrals and 400 have only contacted the parents, that's an issue.
What if the referrals are nothing?
You get referred to the office for this, Stephanie. You want a phone call?
That's what I mean. You don't
He
get
was
a phone
tapping his
call for
pen,
detention.
referral to the
Well,
office,
shouldn't
call the
be to
parent.
office
No.
for that, but
Wait a minute.
I don't know, I mean, if
Well, I
it's
do.
getting
This
to
is
the-
what I do for
Right,
work.
but I'm saying
Okay.
if it's getting to the level of a referral,
Referrals, kids get referred for
for
this.
tapping a pen.
Some
that's
do,
pretty
some
nice.
do.
Well, if it's a behavioral issue.
It's driving me crazy. You're tapping your pen.
please
I want to
do it,
refer them to the
right,
office.
right.
I mean, I think there's probably some data that we could get on a monthly basis, just like Mr. Woodworth was sharing with us, what your overall is for the year. But we have to be careful about what we're looking at, because we are part of the academic appeal process, and once we have a certain amount of information, we get taken out of that, as you've said before. So, and we have to protect confidentiality of students. I understand what you're saying, Donna. I'd be happy to, I think it's beyond the scope of this meeting. I understand what you're saying, Stephanie, because I've had an issue before in middle school where my daughter was called to the office and I was pretty irate because I didn't know. But on the other flip side, if I've got 120 students, I'm not writing down every phone call that I make to a parent. It just, you don't have enough time in
No,
the
I
day.
just wanna
So
see
we
how
have to
many
be
parents, no,
reasonable.
and I get that, but I think that it's important that we know that parents are involved. If it gets to the level, maybe not a pen tapping, but if it gets to the level of, a behavioral issue that needs to be addressed by the parents, parents they're in the best position to be able to work with the teacher and the student. And I would like to make sure that the parents are involved throughout that tiered process. I think it would be important information to have.
And I think Mr. Woodworth is relooking at the process, right, as we move forward, and maybe, is that something that maybe you could take a look at to see if the parents are being brought, maybe that would help some issues if the parents are brought in more, I'm not saying.
We'll take a look at it.
If you could take a look at it?
Again, I just could, so I can understand something here. Where'd the number 900 come from? Was it
I
like,
got that from Don's safety report when he said X amount, he said it was down from,
okay,
902 to 655.
yeah, 655.
okay, so was approximately 900 incidents.
In 15, 16.
1,400 kids, 180 days, you do the math, it's not a lot of referrals.
Could, okay, I'm just trying to understand, could you, I know it's pretty hard to do, but describe an incident, just give, you've got 900, so could you just,
Okay, a typical incident would be that when a student was asked to stop doing something in the hall, they had a bad reaction and had words with the teacher. That probably get written up, and we would end up dealing with that as a referral, an incident, a
A
disciplinary
hallway
incident.
incident, you said?
That would be a disciplinary incident.
Passing in the hallway.
Would
Is that
that
the same?
elevate to the level of contacting the parent?
Depends on what we determine after we do investigation of that situation.
Well, I'm just saying,
We
if a
investigate-
child's being disrespectful,
We
I'm
would
just
get a
listening.
referral.
all the time if that was the case.
We get a referral, we have film, we have hallway film, we can check these out, so we will do an investigation. If we have a student that's being investigated for something serious, we will call.
Right.
If
But
I,
it's a
if, for
simple
instance,
case of
if I
disrespect.
have to talk to a student about somebody else's, what they know about somebody else's situation regarding, say, drug abuse or something like that, because we have a rumor that they know something, I'll call a parent, say, we're gonna have that conversation. So we call the parents administratively very quickly. I drill it home with the assistant principals. Get them involved, let them know what you're doing. I'd rather know up front. Most of the time, they're saying, thank you very much, let me know what you find out.
Right.
So that's been a very successful tool for us, is to call parents.
As far as I'm
Administrative
concerned, if a kid is
teachers,
being
we ask them
disrespectful,
to do their own
Yeah.
phone calls, and, we don't hold them responsible for showing us their logs and whatnot. That's their domain. We think it's an important aspect of follow-through on discipline. Often, when I was a teacher, if I had one incident where I gave a kid a detention, that one would be between me and that student. If it happened again, then I'd call a parent.
That's me too.
So, I think every teacher has to develop their level of that trust thing with the student about handling your discipline. But then, if things don't improve, then you have to go to the next level. And the parent, to me, is the first of the next level. So that's, I agree with you, it's an important piece. Is it a documented piece? I think that's a teacher training piece. I think that's an important thing to recognize the power of that conversation. You learn some great things from those phone calls. So, and that's an important piece.
And we shouldn't wait for something negative to happen to make a phone call, right? So your first phone call to a parent shouldn't be about something negative, a negative interaction. So then you start talking about 100% contact, not to doing it at the beginning of the year before anything happens, and you have 100% contact with families that you work for or serve. So it's, it's good practice, in the past, I've had that as part of a school action goal in my own building, was 100% contact. Anybody that had a student assigned to them for any reason, that they made a phone call before something happened. So it wasn't the first phone call, was not a negative interaction with it. So you build relationships that way, but it's not something that we ask people to stop in the day and write down and report to the, it's just like more, it's a professional courtesy, they have a job to do, the more of these things we ask them to do, the more they get bogged down from doing the real work.
okay, I think,
Professional courtesy, the professional courtesy, what I mean by it, it's professional courtesy, like, I don't ask him to report to me whether or not, I give him the professional courtesy to make the phone calls when he feels it's necessary. I don't micromanage him, that's
Right.
professional courtesy.
No,
That's what
understand
professional
that.
courtesy is.
Well, I understand the term professional courtesy, that,
Well, you asked me, so
right,
I'm
but I
answering.
didn't, right, I understand what it means, but I didn't understand what you meant with respect to Mr.
Yeah.
Woodward.
Or any of the other principals, that's what their job is. I trust that they do their job. I hear from parents when they're not,
okay. I think,
There was a motion on the floor, but there's
But there
no
was not a
second.
second.
I'm sorry, take the time.
okay.
Thank you.
Motion on the floor, there's no second, so there was, okay. Motion fails.
Brian?
Greg?
There's a lot discussed tonight, and Ryan, thank you, Don, thank you, a lot of good points. What I'm hearing is that Ryan and his group, they want to come to a mutual, kind of a partnership with administration on this topic. And he stressed out a few times, mutually agreed upon. And with some people, or some teachers, 5 years or more being here, feel like they're not supported in this, or they're just afraid to bring it up. Maybe we should make a goal to direct, the superintendent to maybe make that agreement with, or kind of work with them closer, or maybe just do monthly checkups and talk to them about it to make sure it's being, that they are working together.
Well, again, I think, as was said a few minutes ago, first of all, the fact that we just spent an hour and a half on this topic, I think the school board is very aware of what's going on right now.
Why don't you ask him if he's worried about us working together?
Well-
Ryan, you worried about us working together?
So,
No, not at all.
well, I feel that, as of right now, I feel comfortable by just getting periodic updates.
Getting updates, okay?
I think we're achieving the same thing.
I don't think we need a goal.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think we're already achieving the same thing, that's all. So, thanks. Okay, so let's,
Move on.
so next, let's move on here. Preliminary enrollment numbers discussion. Excuse me.
I take it we're in a slight recess?
Take a second. Take
I don't think so.
3 minutes.
Oh, it's-
The chair's in there, ask him.
Okay, thank you, we're back. Okay, we don't have, I believe, the information that, for the preliminary enrollment numbers to have the discussion that we were planning on having tonight, so we'll do that at some later time.
But we did not finish our discussion last time on this, so I think Sue did want to, we do want to discuss this.
Yeah, and I
Yes.
think that what Christy Michaud was trying to show us on this chart was these little bumps. That be aware, we've got a bump coming up here in, I'll use Pollard Schools, because that's the one that shows that peachy area, concerned about that. And then over at Danville, concerned about that's with grade 3. So, but if you wanna look further at the high school and middle school, it's a different looking chart.
Right.
Then that would be down to how many kids are enrolled in Block A on Tuesdays of, I'll use, one of Ryan's classes, whatever he's teaching this semester. And that's semester by semester for the high school.
Yeah.
Little different at the middle school. So we need a little bit more information if you have other things you wanna know other than, what are we gonna do with Pollard School if we get more kids there? Are we gonna increase the class size or hire another teacher? Or
Yeah,
move another teacher?
Typically, what I would do, I would come to you and I'd ask to give you two choices. Either we hire another teacher or we waive the policy and exceed the class size. That's what we've done in the past.
And we have done that.
Yeah, we did that, yeah.
And typically, you'd go over by one maybe, and then if we got to two, you'd start to consider you'd consider a teacher. It would all depend on what school and
They have room, a place to do the class,
And we're looking at open enrollment requests, meaning if somebody lives in Danville but wants to go to school in Atkinson, we're looking at these numbers before we make those kind of decisions.
yeah.
And families want to know, obviously, as soon as possible, because they need to make all kinds of arrangements. So I tried to pick July 15th, kind of as the middle of July, to make sure that families knew exactly where they were going, if there were those requests. And we also have to take into consideration if we have staff members who choose to send their children to the district, what that does to a class size as well.
Isn't there some provision, though, that if you go over the class size by a certain amount, that we could add an assistant teacher, or a teacher assistant in there before we break into adding a third classroom?
Well, we talked about that last year. We talked about adding another TSSU. You know, you weren't here. So that was the
I don't
third.
remember that conversation.
That was the third option. Would the classroom be better served with a para instead of breaking the class? Because it happened in I want to say October, November. The class had already established itself.
Right.
And we felt it would be more detrimental to break the class in half and have two separate teachers. So I believe we added a para
That's right.
instead of, because I think we went over by two. We had a couple people move in.
That's also an option.
Yeah, that's option 3, yeah.
Ryan?
I hope it would never be the case that we would hire another teacher and open another classroom because we had transfers from staff.
No. What I said was that they moved in. When we have, this is what could happen, right? So say there was 3 or 4 seats in July, and we accepted, the Greens and the Guides and the Belos children, we put them in that class, and it got them within 2 or 3 of them. And then we had, just for whatever reason, 5 or 6 people moved in, and all of a sudden that class was over. We wouldn't ask your families to move now. That would be when I'd come to you, and it's highly unlikely to happen, because we're watching that if we're within 1 or 2. That would be an extreme case,
Yeah.
right?
We have some holds even right now.
We would put it on a hold, for that reason.
Okay, because I heard you say if a teacher wants to have their child in the district, that could be another pressure point. And I would never want to be in the situation where we have to hire another teacher and start a new classroom because we're accepting transfers in that are optional.
The pressure point, I mean, obviously, most make that decision, well, it could happen a different way. You hire new people, and that's one of the options, it's one of your benefits that you provide to staff members to send their children here. But we would have a hold on those classrooms in terms of class size. The most logical thing is usually it's right from the start of school, like they would start them right in preschool or kindergarten or first grade, whatever their family decision was, and we would have them through, and we'd be watching that through. But we certainly would be very careful not to go over class size because of the staff members or even a transfer. Like if somebody who lived in Danville but wanted to go to Sandown,
Right.
and that created a pressure point in Sandown, because you need the people that live there. Then we wouldn't tell somebody in Sandown, I'm sorry, you can't go to kindergarten there, it's full, you have to go somewhere else. The only place where it's really happened, and correct me if I'm wrong, in Atkinson, sometimes the kindergartens will fill up quickly, and we may have 3 or 4 or 5 Atkinson parents that will have the option to go to another school for kindergarten. So there's a lot of different scenarios, but the scenario I gave you is extreme. If we allowed 3 or 4 in, and then 5 or 6 moved in at that same grade level, that's.
Okay, so I just want to be clear, though, would you notify the board if the pressure point was from transfers?
I would.
Okay.
That's the thing about the hold. I said, when we're within 1 or 2, we're very careful about giving up the last seat or 2 to people that don't live in that particular town or staff members. That's why we put the hold on. It's just, if it's some unforeseen extreme, and that hasn't happened in the 5-6 years I've been doing this here, right? We haven't.
It happened once, actually. Someone did they were denied, and it
Oh,
was
we-
an Atkinson seat, and it was a student who was denied. It was an in-district transfer, I think, from Placer to Atkinson, and they were denied the seat because Atkinson resident had a priority over that seat.
I can assure you that I meet with every single transfer request, every parent that wants to go from one place to another, and I there's a form, actually, an agreement that we put in place. Part of that agreement has to do with class size, and some of it has to do with student behavior, which we've just spent an hour and a half talking about. If you're out of your town in another town and you weren't behaving, I'd ask you to go back to, the seat that you, in your town. But I haven't had to do that, but parents have been great. They meet with every transfer.
In tardiness, because they're responsible for their own transportation.
Yep, right, because if you're driving, because we don't transport them, they're on their own for transportation.
Yeah, thank you.
So, the official business, I guess, on the agenda is, did you have something you wanted to talk to us about?
I do, I think, but it's a non-public.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
It would be under reputation.
Yes. Mrs. Green?
So, under other business, I would like the board to consider requesting a meeting.
You can't do other business in a special meeting. There isn't any.
This is just a regular meeting of the school board.
No, it's a special meeting.
Technically, it's a special meeting, technical
There-
meeting.
There's no provision in the law as
Yeah.
a special meeting.
Well-
It's called a school board meeting. There's
well-
no provision in the law for a special
Well,
meeting.
the chair.
There is in our policies, actually, Donna.
Well, here's what I'm gonna do.
Oh.
I'm gonna take some liberty here as chair, and I wanna hear what you've got to say.
Thank you. I would like the board to consider asking the SAU board to call a meeting to discuss the policy issues concerning the hiring of Mr. Gary.
Okay. I've had a brief conversation with the SAU chair and asked her to seek legal opinion on this subject matter. as far as I'm concerned, I don't think we should do anything until we get that written legal opinion. And at that point in time, if something doesn't make sense to the Timberlane School Board, then I think, then I would, me personally, then I would agree with you. I don't know what-
Well, as I've said before, Mr. Boyle, you lawyers are a dime a dozen. You put your nickel in, you turn the knob, and out comes some bubble gum, and you pick the color you like.
Disagree. Disagree. So, having a little bit of experience down that road, I don't think, I think you should, it's, am I correct, Sue, something's in the works?
I have approached the lawyer.
And, okay,
When I have something to let you
So-
know about, you find out about it, but it's not a Timberlane board discussion. It's an SAU board.
it's an SEU board discussion, so let's,
Correct, but Donna's motion is correct, because the Timberlane School Board can request a special meeting of the SAU board.
Wasn't a motion.
Well, I'd like to make a motion. I would like to motion that the Timberlane Board request a meeting of the SAU Board.
That's an illegal motion. I'm sorry.
Why, because it's a special meeting?
Because this is a special meeting, and by the rules of a special meeting, you can't add anything to an agenda unless everyone, the whole board is here and approves, and we're missing somebody tonight. So no, we cannot add things to the agenda. This is a new agenda item.
So since when do we obey our own policies?
Well,
As chair of the policy committee, I would damn well hope you do.
okay, all right, listen. As far as I'm concerned, I think it has the same net effect, whether it's, the issue that I believe you're concerned about, Mrs. Green, is
Is that legal counsel?
correct, and is being addressed properly, as far as I'm concerned, because there is, as I look around this room, there's not a lawyer in this room, so I'd like to hear the opinion of a lawyer before we start going down any of this road.
And were you privy to the questions being asked this lawyer?
Not my job.
Well, you see, the answer you get depends on the questions you
Let's,
ask.
let's not go down this road until we see, until we see what happens. I don't want to assume something along the lines you're talking about until we see it. I think it's.
Okay, so could I suggest if we have another special meeting, so-called special meeting, they don't need to be special meetings anymore since we've approved the policy that we just approved.
That's fine.
But going forward, could we have other business or this item added to the agenda?
Fine,
Thank you.
no
All
problem.
right, thank you.
Mr. Guy,
Make a motion to go into non-public under 91-A:3, paragraph 2, section C.
I'll second.
just made second, so all those in favor?
She has to
Oh,
pull
she's
the
gotta
board.
pull.
Let's roll the board, I'm sorry.
That was the right one, right, Kathy?
It was,
Okay.
that was reputation, yeah. Mr. Belo?
Sure.
Mr. Boyle?
Yes.
Mrs. Judy? Yes. Dr. Farah?
Yes.
Ms. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Guy?
Yes.
Mrs. Sherman?
Yes?
Mr. Scarrow?
Yes.